and welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a very interesting recipe for you. This is a ranch dip, but it is also completely vegetarian. Actually, it's vegan, and we're going to show you how to make this. It's based on potatoes. There's no dairy or anything like that in this. It is completely vegan. Really, really interesting flavor. So we're going to start with a potato. This is just like a baking potato. We have some leek greens. We're going to use some olive oil, some onion powder. This is an emulsifier called soy lecithin. We're going to use some lemon juice, some tahini, which is ground sesame seeds, some garlic, and some fresh dill. And we're going to get started. We're just going to get our potato peeled. If you see little dark spots in it like that, you can just take those out. Now we're using, this is just like a baking potato, so you want something like this, or a Yukon Gold is fine. Something that's a little less waxy and a little more starchy, we find works a little bit better. So we want to get this peeled. You want to clean it before you peel it, and then give it a good peel. Make sure you cut all the eyes out, so once you've got the skin off, you can just get any little last bits of skin out of there. If you've never used that little hook on the end of your peeler, that's what it's for. You just want to make sure you get those all out. Then we're going to cut this up and get it ready for boiling. So we are going to cut it into roughly even-sized pieces. They don't need to be super even or even particularly pretty. We're going to be blending all of this together. So this does not have to be the fanciest cut in the world. But you do want everything about roughly the same size, so if you notice that some of them are a little bit bigger, you can cut them down to size. So yeah, everything about the same size, and then we're just going to cover that in cold water. And then we're going to put our leek greens in. Now these were fresh leek greens from leeks that we bought locally. We're going to add a little bit of salt in there. We actually had those leeks frozen, and these are still frozen. They're basically right out of the freezer. And we're just going to boil it in there with the potatoes. We're actually also going to add a bay leaf in there as well, just for a little bit of flavor. But we want the water to be quite flavorful as well, because we're going to be using some of that later in the final result. We're going to peel our garlic. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty. Everything's going to get blended together. We're going to use the stick blender to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. So we're going to add the olive oil to the garlic, and you've seen us do this before in some of our older recipes, like the hummus and baba ganoush recipes. So we're going to cook these garlic cloves in the olive oil and let them get nice and brown, and also infuse the olive oil with a bunch of flavor. While that's going on is a good time to get your dill ready, so just give it a rough chop. It doesn't need to be particularly fine or fancy. Once again, everything is going to get blended together. So there we go. There's our dill set aside. And now's a good time to test our potatoes. So we're just going to give that a little poke with the fork. If it's still pretty firm, needs a little bit more time. Meanwhile, our garlic has gotten nice and brown. You want to make sure you keep an eye on this. You don't want it to burn, but you do want to get a lot of nice color like that. A little bit later, we're going to test our potatoes again, and they are ready. So once a fork goes in really easily, it should be really well cooked, because we are going to be hitting this with a stick blender. You just move our leeks out of the way. And some of them may be falling apart a little bit. That's fine. We're going to set that aside and let the potatoes drain a bit, but you don't want to dump this out, because we're keeping that liquid that we cooked the potatoes in. We do want that. We're going to use that in the final product. It's got a lot of flavor. It's got all that flavor from the leek and the bay leaf as well. So we definitely want to hold on to this. So just keep that. It doesn't need to go back in the stove. It can cool down now, but from here we're going to add our potatoes to the nice garlicky oil. It's got the nice brown cloves of garlic in there. Then we're going to add our other ingredients. So this is the soy lecithin. This is an emulsifier. This just helps the oil to stay emulsified in with the potatoes so that it doesn't break. We tried this recipe once without using that, and it sort of broke a little bit. We're going to add our other ingredients. So there's the onion powder and the lemon juice. And also the tahini. Now the tahini will also help emulsify, so you can definitely use both of those in conjunction, and it'll help you hold a little more oil in your final product. We're going to add a little bit of salt. Potatoes do ask for a lot of salt because they do soak it up really, really well. And then we're just going to start hitting this with the blender. So at the beginning here, it's going to be very much like making mashed potatoes. We're just going to sort of crush everything down together until it's a little less chunky. Now you can see this is still quite a dry mixture. It's right now just the potatoes and the oil. So it's not really quite enough liquid in there yet just to get everything going, but we are just going to start and add a little bit of that liquid that we cooked the potatoes in. So this is that really flavorful broth, essentially, that's full of that flavor of potatoes and the leeks and the bay as well. We're just going to start mixing this. Now we're off the heat right now. We're not mixing this over a heat. Everything's still warm, but none of it is hot. We're going to add our dill in. That's our chopped dill. And then just start mixing it with the blender again. So we're just going to hit it with that blender a little bit. You can see it starting to come together already. It's still pretty dry. We are going to add a little bit more liquid as we go forward. And you can continuously add spoonfuls of liquid from the potato broth as you're going forward, just to keep everything nice and smooth as you're going. And whatever final consistency you want, that's really where you're aiming at. You can make it as smooth or as sort of runny as you like. Honestly, you can make it very much like a dip or even a sauce. Ours came out quite stiff. We could have added a lot more oil, which would have made it a little more fluffy, but that's it. That's the whole thing. Really, really excellent. Goes amazingly on just like raw veggies. We have these amazing crackers. Fantastic, delicious recipe. Completely lactose-free, vegan. Really, really delicious. I really urge you to give it a shot. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.